Hi there, welcome to Real Moms of Real Estate. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how we all got in the business and what that's been like, juggling that as a mom. So since we are moms and we are real, that's what we're going to talk about. So.
Sarah, start us out. How did you come to be the mom broker agent that you are?
That's not a very pretty story, but actually the way that I got into real estate was through my family. You know, like, and there's a lot of like family teams that you'll see too that are like moms or dads and their kids or, you know, whatever. But I'm actually like a third generation real estate agent. My grandfather had a brokerage. His sons ran that after he decided he didn't want to run it every day, but he never really stopped running it. He was very involved in that, probably to my uncle's frustration at times. And then my dad had actually a Remax that he had opened in Dayton. He opened the first Remax in Dayton when I was in high school or college. I can't remember which. And so when I graduated, I moved to Cincinnati to work for P&G. So I was in their F&A department. And my dad's like, you know, you got a few weeks. You might as well just get your license. And I was like, yeah, might as well. So I only had to take a couple classes because my business classes worked for, you know, the Hondros stuff, the real estate school. So I graduated on Mother's Day, and I got my license like 2 weeks later, and I started at P&G like the next week. And that was like, and no one wanted to hire me because I was going to be part-time. Like literally no one in town would hire me. I think I talked to like 8 brokerages, and there was a company right at the corner here, you know, where like where that law office is now at the corner of Zumstein.
Yeah.
That used to be a real estate. That old Victorian was a real estate office, and that was the Sharon Kiefer and Dave McDonald, and it was called McDonald Kiefer Realtors. And she's like, "I'll take a flyer on you." I'm like, "Okay." So Sharon hired me, thank God, and then after like later that year. Because I was like kind of doing open houses on the weekends and, you know, doing the P&G thing during the week. She's like, you know, we're going to go to a Remax format. I'm just letting you know that we're buying the franchise. And I was like, okay. And so, of course, as you know, like back in the day at Remax, it was just the only option was a monthly fee. Like it was 100% commission, and it was a bunch of money every month. And I was like, holy cow.
That's hard part-time.
It was, it was a little scary. And then in April, it just got to the point where I was like, well, if I flop at this, like if this is the worst decision I've ever made, I can still bartend and make my house payment and my car payment. That was literally my calculus. And I was like, okay, I can sling drinks and clear that every month because I bought a house right out of school. And, you know, in a car, I didn't have any money, you know, so everything was financed. That's how I got here.
Nice.
So it was a little
But
crazy.
then you went on to open the first Keller Williams in Cincinnati, and it's turned out okay for you.
It's turned out okay. It was
All
not
those
a bad
brokers
gig.
had known.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was not a bad,
Someone's
it's not been a
got a
bad
chance
gig
on
for
ya.
me. So, yeah. So that's, I mean, you know, it's just, it was kind of a first career because I was at P&G like 10 months, and they're like, what did we do wrong? I'm like, it's not you, it's me. It's
in my
blood. Like, this is just not a fit for me. So, you know, and that kind of makes sense. You know, you do all those personality assessments and all that stuff, and I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? Yeah. You know, that was a bad idea. Yeah. So
I'm surprised a lot of brokerages weren't willing to take you even if you were part-time.
No
I
one.
feel like there's so many agents
No
that are,
one.
quote, part-time or, you know,
Well,
I do
and
it on the
there's
side for family.
more favorable
You know,
structures
I just
now,
feel
I
like
think.
there's different, I'm just shocked to hear that
it
that's
was
not how it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I think the term bivocational is probably more appropriate because it's not that an agent, like we have a lot of agents that run a more traditional career and a real estate career, both by any definition full-time in each. They're bivocational. They have multiple pursuits, and maybe it's because that's how I got into it. Like, there's no way I could have gotten into this without because I didn't have any financial runway.
Yeah.
You know, so if it would have been like, no, you can't do this unless you're going to be full-time from the get-go, I mean, I would have probably what I would have done is just put my license at my dad's company up in Dayton, but I would have had to kick the can because there was no way. I mean, literally, it was like the money was in my bank account for about 30 seconds before it went out to some bill. You know what I mean?
That's like everyone
that had been allocated
early
for.
20s, right?
So,
It's kind of amazing.
yeah.
that you can live that way, but
Let me know when it stops.
Yeah. Yeah, for real, for real. So yeah, it was kind of that's how it happened. Yeah, I mean, bivocational is a pretty normal thing to do now. And I think you can be very successful doing that. And we have a few of our agents that kill it, like have, complete full-time 40+ hour
Yeah.
week, insurance
it's
providing
also,
jobs.
I was going to say, it's really helpful to
the
have like a
hard
W-2 if you want to invest or if you want to
Right.
buy a house, because you have to have, 2 years or something after you jump to full commission. So it's nice to have that like in your
For
pocket.
sure.
The stability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just went like balls to the wall, and I got the date for my test, and the same day put the 2 weeks in at my full time
God,
job,
that's
and
awesome.
I said I'm gonna fly or die.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like some people are just like that though. If you don't have that push of like I need to sell a house or I physically am not gonna have money, it's for me that's like what I needed. If I had that safety net of knowing like, oh, I still have my full time job, I
Sure.
don't know that I would have built the business I built so quickly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That is interesting because when, we have the vantage point of seeing a lot of license applications come through, and you can, frankly, you can kind of tell in that initial interview, what the rest of the financial picture looks like. Is there, and this is going to sound maybe a little bit judgmental, but is there grit? Is there fire in the belly? Is there a necessity?
Do you have skin in the game?
Yeah. Do you have to make money doing this? And if you don't, are you a driver? And are you going to, grit through it?
That
and
must be really fun from where you
interesting.
sit to like kind of make a prediction or have a feeling about someone, whether they're going to make it or not, and then to get to see that play out or to be surprised by people, right?
surprised a lot by,
Yeah.
and it has nothing to do with, everyone can do this. You know what I mean? Everyone can. A lot of people will choose not to. And that's not a bad or good. It's
Or
not
they
a
run
fit
at the
for
wrong
everybody.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Or I think people have different expectations as to what the job entails when they're in their
Right.
classes and, all that. And then reality comes and it's not at all like your Hondros business class or
Well,
real
we were
estate class.
joking before, that idea of like HGTV. It's like when someone says, I love houses, I watch HGTV all the time. I'm like, oh, we're done here. Like, that is not, you are not going to love houses when the fleas jump on your legs when you're showing, a sketchy house with, that hasn't been taken care for. It's just, they don't put those on HGTV.
I
Those
know,
are
I-
not
right.
So,
I d-
how do you guys like feel when you are talking to someone who's like, "Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm getting into this business. I got in because I wanted the flexible schedule."
I say, good for you. I'm not going to like burst their bubble,
No,
but
yeah.
I think that a lot of people say, oh, I'm part-time or I'm like, this job is not part-time because you don't get to pay. You do get to flex your hours and you are a little bit more flexible, but your time is kind of dependent on somebody else's time. So while you're part-time,
It's
weird.
it's not really that you get to be flexible; it's that you have to be flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
that's
Yeah.
well said.
Right. So like I might be open on Mondays from 10 to 3, but the rest of my week is evenings and
Right.
weekends.
Right.
So
I feel like a lot of people just see us, what we do post or what we present, and they see us just getting to go to these cool houses all the time and these fun events with our agent friends and get all this recognition. But in reality, I like always just want to hug them and be like, oh, buckle up, girl. You got it. You got it.
Fine.
But
That is
it's a
something
lot
we
more
have-
than that.
Yeah, that is something we have not done ourselves a good service with, both to our clients and also to prospective colleagues.
Yeah.
is-
Setting the expectation.
'cause, well, you do, like at least on the social media front and in how you carry yourself. It's the highlight reel.
Yeah.
It's you don't want to talk about all the crap that happened before to get here. So I mean we kind of do that to ourselves. But you hear people say I want to get in for the flexibility and the income opportunity. And it's like if you take too much flexibility, it will completely negate your income opportunity.
yeah.
So it's there is a discipline to the calendar that if you carry out a very small percentage of your day, if you're disciplined about a very small percentage of your day, you really can then have the flexibility you want. But you can't. It's not a free for all.
I will say the thing that I like about the flexibility is not so much like location in terms of like, okay, I have to be in the office. I like that I could be I was out at my sand volleyball game last night and we were signing final deals. Like I liked that I could still be there without having to be at the office and I could still get my work done. But at the same time, you're trying to have your social side of your life
Sand volleyball.
Yeah.
at your sand volleyball. And, you know, and then you're like, oh, hold on, sorry, don't talk to you. Like you're making sure that everything's buttoned up.
Right.
So it's a give and take. I feel like honestly with any job, there's
The location independence part is really awesome, but it's hard. Like the mom side of this, if we pull that in, your kids don't know when you're behind your laptop screen if you're on Facebook or you're writing they don't have that context.
Right.
So it's really hard, like carving the time out to try to do that even still like in a separate room or not at the dinner table. Like
Yeah.
that's what I struggle with is like, I'm really doing this for you so that I can be here with you. But what it might feel like for you is that I'm
Yeah,
working
that's
while we're
hard.
spending time together. Like that's a hard part of it, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true. That's very true.
Did anyone else like struggle with the flexibility at first, like just after getting your license, and it felt like
How do I fill my time?
yeah, and everyone else is working
Well,
during
you're
the
like-
day, and you're like, what am I supposed? I'm supposed to be working, but I don't know what I'm. You know, that's kind of how I felt when I first got my license.
Yeah.
Did anyone
do you
else
come
struggle
on
with
as
that?
an individual agent?
I did. Yeah. Yeah. With a local company. And I just kind of felt like I was just sitting there. And,
Yeah.
Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
You
Right,
know?
like
People
you're
come
gonna
to
like,
me.
like you're
Yeah.
gonna tell people you're an agent, and then all of a sudden, like the phone's gonna start ringing, and someone's gonna say, "Oh, I want to sell my house."
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that doesn't happen.
But then that guilt
part
of
doesn't
like,
happen.
oh, all my friends are, at work right now.
Yeah.
My husband's at work, or
Right.
fiancé at the time. It's
Right.
kind of a weird.
I would get horrible anxiety about it.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
feeling like I'm not doing what I need to be doing, or like I'm supposed to be doing something else.
Knowing what those things are.
Right.
That's the worst part. You're like, okay, I'm gonna work. And you get your laptop out, you get your iced coffee ready to go, and then you're sitting there and you're like,
Perusing the MLS.
Writer's
Hey,
block.
yeah.
Just
what do
like,
I do?
I was lucky enough. I started on a team, so when I started, they just handed me like we went through scripts, and he was just like, "Here's 1,000 of our old leads. Just
Get on the
calling
phone.
people.
start calling." And so I felt like productive, but I only did 3-4 hours of phone calls a day. I got there at like 9, and I was done by
honestly,
1.
That's all you need to do. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
know that sounds like oversimplified, but it's like when we go through those, like we have those structured classes like Ignite and like Bold, and there's always the collective eye roll of, oh my gosh, I've heard this 1,000 times, and it's like, okay, just do it because then everything will be fine. I mean, it is a really predictable.
proven.
If there is outbound lead generation at a cadence that is going to deliver you the amount of business that you need to have the lifestyle you want, just do it every day, and that's winning the day. But it doesn't need to take 8 hours, and it's and it's not something you're going to do with a kid on a knee. Probably that's a shut the door.
Yeah.
Give me 50 minutes of focus time. Then I'm going to emerge, and But it is not knowing what to do.
It
I
also
think where a lot
comes
of people
down
get
to
stuck.
personality and like, are you cut out? And
Yeah.
like, the grit, because I remember taking Bold when I first got licensed, and it was like you break off and they're like, come in with your, your contacts
Yep.
and start calling like your parents' friends or like your high school friends' parents. And I just remember being like, this
got
is
the nervous
so
sweats just thinking about
awkward.
that.
I know, like it's just not my personality to
sweating.
force an
Yeah,
interaction.
yeah.
Like I'm a very social person and I can connect really easily, but I can't just call you out of the blue and say, by the way, did you hear?
Right.
I need your business, or I'm not eating
know.
next month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we do talk about there's different types, there's a bazillion ways to grow a real estate business, and and those ways match different personality styles, But it's, but that flexibility, and then getting kids into the mix and how do you separate the two and all that. That's where it gets a little interesting for sure. So,
Yeah. I feel like when talking about like how we got in, before real estate, I worked in aviation.
Okay.
And it was an aviation startup. So it was like aviation is an industry that just doesn't sleep, because when the planes aren't flying.
I'm glad they don't sleep
setting
if
and
I'm flying.
maintenance- Yeah, right. It's just a really intense
I bet.
industry. And so I was working probably like 60 to 80 hour weeks for several years, missing out on all sorts of social stuff, family stuff, not making it to things that were important. And I was super invested in the concept and in the job. But after a few years, we went under. And I remember sitting there like kind of in the rubble thinking, I will never work again, so hard for someone else's
That I
dream
can't
or
control.
money that I can't control, right? And so I had like a casual conversation with someone over like Thanksgiving break when I was just back in Cincinnati visiting, and I was kind of like trying to map my next move, and he was like, "I really need some help. You're in a transition. Let me pay for your license and kind of give you like an exposure to real estate, and we'll go from there." And that was the conversation. I had no idea what I was really getting myself into, but I thought I've always been interested in investment. Maybe this will give me access to deals.
Right.
And if I like it, great. If I don't, I'll just move on.
Yeah.
And that's how I started, and it was definitely like a crash course, really intense first like 6 months, but I wouldn't change it because it was just like boots on the ground, day one, go figure
Well,
it
and
out.
you dove in. You
Yeah.
were like, just, bring it.
Yeah. I almost think it's harder, like to your point, to have two jobs, to have to split your brain that way and your activities and your like business mind. I liked just like hit the ground running and figure it out.
Right.
Well, I think with our company specifically too, they offer so many courses, and I feel like even though we are all competitors with each other, kind of, I mean, like I could go to anyone's door and they would be willing to help me, which is
Right.
such a
We
great
have
feeling,
a
especially the
community.
agent.
Yeah.
Not every.
Not everyone's
Yeah.
going to slam the door
Right.
and be like, "No, I'm not going to help you with this deal."
Right.
Did you
We're-
all
we're
start in
fortunate.
different brokerages and then find your way? Or I started with Keller Williams, so.
Yeah, I started with a different brokerage. I would change. I think I would change the way I started. I don't know if I would have. Maybe I would have joined a team, like you were saying, just jump right in those first like 6 months. I've just felt like I wasted a lot of time wondering what I should do.
Yeah.
And not really knowing like who to go to or.
How did you end up getting in?
Yeah, so so my husband and I, we actually bought a house. We lived in Louisville at the time, and we had this amazing agent, and I was working in recruiting, actually IT recruiting, which is funny looking back now because it was like sitting in a room, cold calling all day long, and I had anxiety all day long, and my goal was just to get someone to a coffee meeting where I could meet them in person. Like that was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Win the day.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so we bought a house in Louisville, decided to sell it, moved back to Cincinnati because we're both from here. So it was like maybe 6 months later we were selling this house, and the agent was like, we hired her again, even though it was such a short time frame because we loved her so much. And I knew I didn't want to transfer back and do the same thing, like IT recruiting. I was like, this is not.
Stick a fork in it.
Yeah, exactly. She was like, you should consider it. You know, I think you would be great. I think you would enjoy it. I loved her. I loved our experience with her, impact she had on us. So I got my license like right away. We moved back 3 weeks later,
awesome.
license, and then sat around for like, like, what do I do?
They don't teach you how to run your business in school. They teach you,
No.
fraud is bad.
Yeah.
Right.
It is.
Yeah. And it is.
And it is.
Yes, yeah. But luckily, a girlfriend from college like gave me a chance, to help them buy their first house. I still
Cringe.
I still cringe. I had them in my little Volkswagen Golf, in the back seat. They're both over 6 feet tall. We went and saw 10 houses the first day. I'm driving them everywhere. I'm like, wow, I was
They're good friends, though.
That's
Those
awesome.
are
really good friends. So yeah, that's how
Really fun.
got
That
started.
is funny.
Yeah.
I started with KW in Louisville. I just
really?
graduated college, and I graduated with a business degree and an art degree, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I mean, who really knows what they want to do when they get out of college? I mean, if you do, good for
52,
you.
I still.
So I was the one that I'm cringing now thinking about this. Oh, I love watching HGTV and
yeah.
these interior design things, and I want to flip houses. I want to remodel, which was primarily the basis of wanting to. So I was like, I'll get my license. I'll build up this nest egg, and then I'll do my first flip. But
Copper penny.
yes, I wanted to call it the copper penny. I still do. But that was the whole premise. But I had no idea what I was getting. I was 20.
Who does?
22, and I just got with a great team. I really liked the brokerage, and then wanted to move closer to family up in Cincinnati, and that's how I found Sarah and everybody here. But I had no idea
so
what
glad
the
you
heck
found
I
us.
was doing. I mean, think back and you're like, oh God.
That's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice, when you say doing people justice kind of in those initial kind of intro meetings or months, is like find some kind of structure. Like whether
Yes.
it's joining a team or like the coaching element is great. Like
Productivity
if you
coaching or anything.
Yeah, giving maybe a percentage of your commission away to have that structure and guidance, I
Makes
feel like
all the
is
difference.
so worth it.
I
It makes
agree.
all the
Because
difference.
otherwise you're just winging it.
I
Yeah.
didn't even, I remember going to my first, this is so how new and fresh and naive I was. I was going to my first closing ever. I had no idea what to expect. No idea. And I got there early because, you know, you're excited. And I'm like 22. And I'm like, oh, my little business attire. I'm selling my first house. And like, thank God the title people like had graces on me because they knew that. I mean, clearly I looked probably like 20. And he was like, so do you know what's going to happen here? And I was just like, no.
Nope.
Sure. And he's like, all right, you're just going to sit there. You don't have to do anything. And I was like, okay. He's like, and then I'll hand you a check at the end.
Like,
And I was like, that
excellent.
sounds great. And but I had no, I mean, like just total concept of what like the magnitude of like what I was helping somebody do didn't really resonate until, you know, like
Yep.
4 deals in, like when she started to get a rhythm. Because I was just so naive, I guess. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I had no knowledge of the industry really jumping in. Like I remember going, I interviewed,
Yeah.
interviewed at multiple brokerages. I literally wore a suit, like a skirt and like a jacket and like brought my resume.
But yeah.
And they were, I had no clue. I
Yeah.
thought they were like
a job interview.
Yeah,
Like
and
IT recruiting.
and he just like kind of set it aside and like,
You don't need this.
yeah,
Silly girl.
silly girl, you know, yeah.
High school, right? And passed your test? Okay.
Yeah,
You
you're
can follow
good.
that mirror, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
But honestly, isn't that a little bit terrifying?
Yes.
Very much so.
Like you see that a lot, or I guess with experience, you start to recognize those agents that are super fresh and don't know what they're doing. There's only one way to learn, and it's through transactions. And
yeah.
each time there's something you haven't seen before. But it's almost like should be a requirement to have some sort of mentor or handhold type thing because you're helping people buy a property.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't have the experience to know what you're seeing to then
Right.
pass it along to them, I mean, obviously you have inspections and things that are kind of like, kind of prop you up there. But that is kind of scary.
I can sometimes look back at deals and like I said, I hit the ground running. Like I had something under contract.
How did you get in? What was your story?
So I was an unlicensed assistant for shout out to Eric Stanio. And I had no idea anything about real estate. I was coming from a background in cosmetology. I knew I didn't want that anymore. I had gone to college for education, real quickly learned I didn't want to do that. Just wasn't for me. And so I was doing admin work, and our CRM is called Command. And I'll never forget, like, after I was like getting the hang of everything and I was going to do his compliance and I was seeing the checks come in. He works his butt off. He's amazing at his job. But I was seeing the checks coming in that he was getting. And I was like, I think I'm on the wrong end of this. I think I maybe want to do that job.
Also, why it's so hard to find a great admin.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Because they see the
Because
funny.
we want that. And we're already good at the
Wait a
admin
second.
part. So we know what we're doing. Which I will say gave me a huge benefit when I started. I was already familiar with contracts. I've
Right.
been in an office with this man for several months, listening to him on the phone, negotiating deals, talking to people, and I will never take that time for granted because I think
Great
that was the
mentorship.
reason I was able to.
He's a great agent to listen to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is.
He's very knowledgeable and he works very hard. So like, yeah, I was set up well for that. I can't take full credit for being a quicker to grow, but
Yeah, but you can take full credit for optimizing your opportunity. I mean, and saying and
We
having the
always
presence of
laugh
mind
now.
to say,
he has a new like really awesome admin. She's so sweet, and every time I run into them, he'll be like, "Thank goodness it didn't work out with you." we'll joke about it now. But back to what you were saying, I will sometimes look back at some deals from when I was like freshly licensed that like maybe didn't make it to closing or didn't make it past inspections, and I'm like, man, if I had the experience I had now and I would have handled that differently, we probably would have got to closing on these.
yeah.
And that like hurts, but
You learned
You
a
learned,
lot
yeah.
through that.
Yeah, you have to go through it. And I almost think that when that is a big reason most people don't make it past that first few years, because you have one big thing happen like that, you leave a closing in tears, or you leave somewhere that you're not feeling good about what happened, and you're like, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
Or you learn from it and you take it as the experience.
I will say it was nice having a team, because I think like my first 5 deals with my first team, it was like I had a handheld with the lead agent on the team. His name was Nick. He was super helpful. So he was monitoring every single one of those deals and saying like, I would do this, right? Your inspection reports like this. So that was super helpful, because I had, again, no idea what I was doing other than like I can talk to you in front of people,
Right.
and I know what a kitchen looks like, you know.
Right.
I have a license.
And
Yeah.
I have my license.
This
So
is a
he was
snake.
super helpful. So for me, that was like a huge,
Yeah.
because I got to listen to him.
I feel like that's like a common misconception with just like the layman or clients, that a real estate transaction is just like putting 2 people together who have like access to either the property or the client. But there's so much
Yeah.
about the flow of a real estate transaction that most people don't understand, like
No.
each step and the order of operations and what can go wrong at each
Right.
step. And so I find it's like really frustrating to have to explain why your job is important, you know, because for some reason people think that a real estate commission is negotiable every time. It's like, you know, like that really seems like a lot. And it's like, do you have these skills? Why aren't you writing your own contract?
Right.
You
There's
know,
a reason why the profession.
what's going to happen when
long as it
your,
has.
you know, your main sewer line has tree roots through it, and you know, and you don't know who to call or what to do? Like, there's a frustration in that of like, I've put the time in to be an expert in this, and
Right.
unless you're an expert, let me
Right.
do my job, you know.
And your job is to make it as painless and
Right.
easy as possible
Yeah.
to
Isolate them.
almost,
Yeah, bubble wrap them from
Yeah.
Yeah.
from all the barbs that are coming. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I heard or I think I saw a meme that was like, you can buy the cheaper alcohol, but don't complain where you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
And it was like a reference to like, you can use a cheaper agent, but if things don't go well,
Yeah, well, you do kind of get what you pay for.
yeah.
Basement
sure.
floods the first
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
month you live
Yeah,
in.
yeah, that was foreseeable. Yeah, for sure. It's funny because my kids, you know, we were talking about like kind of how this rolls in with our children. It's like, you know, they'll hear me on the phone and they'll be like, "Who are you talking to?" And I'll explain, and they're like, "I thought you were talking to like a kid." And I'm like, "Well, sometimes you have to lay it out." And it's, you know, so it's been interesting kind of
Yeah.
they've seen a lot of different interaction requirements.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where you have to be like, okay, who am I talking to? How do they need to hear this message so that it lands?
Yeah.
And you know, my daughter say, "You were so nice to them," and I'm like, "I'm so annoyed, I can't talk right now." You know, and it's, you know, it's just a funny, you know, because it's definitely like they, you know, and then I'll see the eye roll like, "Oh, mom," you know, but it is, you know, they see that you do have to have some dexterity and some flexibility to meet people where they are and
Yeah.
to get, and it's that's been interesting as they've gotten older.
Yeah, that
Kinda how
kind
they
of
come on
plays
it.
into the like financial literacy conversation that we were having.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like having the conceptual awareness of like things breaking in a house or what can go wrong. Like when I grew up, if something broke in our house, like you just called you called the plumber, or I think a lot of people are that way. Like you're just not very like handy or hands-on, you know.
Right.
It's like you call the appropriate party. But it's like one of the things that I hope my kids take away from their exposure to real estate through our investments or through my job is hearing those phone conversations and then saying like, what happened? Like what that can happen,
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
it kind of sticks with you. So hopefully they're collecting some of that.
I think they do. I mean, again, when like, so I both of my kids were born after I was licensed. So I mean, it's like from in the womb, you know, they're listening to real estate conversations. My mom took this really unflattering picture of me when I was having, I think it was Amelia, my first daughter, and I'm in the gown in the delivery room, and I've got my hair and I'm on my phone, and all you can see is like this giant stomach and this little. Of course, phones then were not smart; they were little, but it's like, you know, from the womb, you know, they've heard all the conversations.
Do you think either one of your daughters will get into real estate?
It's funny because they are asked that a lot. So their dad's family, especially, will be like, "When are you gonna go in? And my I don't know if they will or not, but the rule is they have to do something else first.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to do something else first. They need to know, first, they need to find their own love. And that if it works out that this is something they love, great. But this is not a default. No, sister, you got to go make your own jack for a few years.
Yeah.
And then we can talk.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that's smart too, because otherwise it's just like you've seen some of those
Yeah.
teams or whatever where it's like just a kid comes right out of, and they just take kind of like the trickle down, right? It's
Right.
like you're just throwing them a bone, but they're not like learning to scrap really.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's I think that's a key part of it is just having, I don't know, I want my daughters to have financial control over their lives, whether they choose to stay single or get married or whatever. I want them to understand their different paths for wealth and never be in a position where they're dependent upon a parent, a partner, anyone but themselves to know that they're okay to
Absolutely.
be financially
Yeah.
buoyant and make good decisions that way. So if and maybe that's part of it. I feel like if they rolled right into the business, what did they learn?
I think it all comes
So.
back to having skin in the game. If you don't feel that you have to do this to survive, it's not an easy business to
No,
be in.
it can be a
If
little.
you can be
frustrating.
bailed out. Yeah.
Right. If someone's going to throw you a lead because you can't pay your rent next month, but you haven't done any prospecting or whatever, you're never going to learn. So I think that's a really great model
Yeah.
to set up. I would love eventually for either of my kids to be able to, if they wanted to get into real estate, be able to have that opportunity under me. But I might even implement that when they get older and be like, all right, it's here if you decide you're ready, but you need to go do your own
Yeah,
thing first.
For sure.
I love
And
that
again,
too.
yeah, that's just me. I just feel like I don't know. I don't want them to ever feel like they can't do something or not know if they can. I want them to go, yeah, well, I was fine on my own before I X, Y, and Z.
You also don't ever, and this is neither here nor there, but me personally, I would, if I'm a successful agent, I don't want anyone to ever be able to come for me and be like, you're only successful because you're mom.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You only do well
Whether
'cause
that's
you're
true
mom.
or not, to know in your heart of hearts that,
Yeah,
that you made it. Yeah.
I
the work
worked
in.
hard and I'm here because of me.
And I think that's something that's a really neat, yeah, there are costs with having children and having this career. It's being at, the sand volleyball game, it's being at their t-ball game or whatever, and, you're the mom that's
On the phone.
on the
Okay.
phone or whatever. But it's like, the other side of it, yeah, they get to see that, and yeah, that's not always awesome. But you're there, which maybe you wouldn't have been able to be. But I think they get the idea of, oh, you do have to kind of giddy up and get after it and have some, I don't know if the word is, I don't know if it's a confidence or what, but just know that, yeah, that guy that's driving that, Mercedes, if he had to work like I know my mom has had to work, good for him. Not just did someone hand, you know what I
That
mean?
must be nice.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, they definitely have a sense that things are not handed.
They're seeing a result to your hard work.
That just occurred to me when we're having this conversation that I think is really cool is that they do have that visibility to our work. Whereas
Yeah.
when your dad or mom goes to the office,
Right. It's like
you
they're
have
just,
no
poof,
idea what
there they
they're
go.
doing.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
I know that you work hard for me in a time sense or stress, I can tell you had a stressful day, the things they pick up on.
Right.
But they don't get to really have insight into your daily activities the way that they might with us. So that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really true.
Yeah, and I think our oldest is 6.5, and I think he's just now starting to really put two and two together. Seeing us work, because Josh is in real estate too, so we kind of been doing this
Right.
side by side in different ways for a while, but no, it's kind of interesting. He's starting to put, he's realizing that
Right.
these, he can play on his baseball team
Yeah.
because
Right.
we're working
Right.
hard for them and to build a life for them, and so that's kind of neat to see that.
If you ask him, do you know what I do for work? Do you know what he would say?
Yeah, that I help people buy
houses.
buy houses. Yeah.
Nice. Good
I
job.
always
Have 'em
like
trained
listening
well.
to the
Yeah.
kids' answers to
Yeah.
that because I think
Well,
it's
and it's
Yeah.
very like the preschool, like, what do you want to be? And it's like, an astronaut or whatever.
There's not a bunch of them saying real estate agent.
There was
saying,
not one. We
yeah.
just went to a kindergarten graduation.
Not one. Yeah.
I
Maybe next
actually
year.
just helped a client who has a son the same age, like it's one of his little friends.
Yeah.
And so I brought my son with me to a couple showings when we were looking for a house for them. And so having that conversation on the way home, he's like in his car seat, and he's like, "What are we doing there?" You know. And it's like, this is my job. I help people find a place to live. You know. And so he started to ask really funny questions around that, like even just his friends, like, "Are you going to help them find a place to live?" I'm like, they have a house, but like conceptually, it's funny to try to
See them put
wrap
it
their
together.
head.
Tell them that their living room is too small and they need to upgrade. Start dropping hints.
Your toy room's not very big.
Here's
my mom's card.
Yeah. She can help your mom out. That's very funny.
Even like when I had a kind of a rough day like last week or something, and Jackson picked up on that. He like, understood it, and I kind of was able to explain to him, not exactly what happened, but that sometimes we're frustrated or,
Yeah.
we all don't have.
It's not all a highlight reel.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's good to have some exposure to that.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. It definitely gives them a different perspective. It
Yeah.
really does. My daughter, Cece, my younger of the two, asked me one time, she's like, "So what do you make?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, how much money do you make?"
Oh.
And I'm like, and I don't know, she was probably 7 or 8 at the time. And I'm like, "As much as I want to." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And then we went through the whole thing. And then she came back a few days later, and I don't remember all the ins and outs of it, but she's like, "So you're the boss?" I'm like, "I'm self-employed." Like we went through. So it's this whole thing, but I will never. So what do you? I'm like, "What do you mean? What do I make?"
Yes, Cece.
And
She
her
is-
little eyes went like, "Oh, okay." It's just a funny.
Yeah, that is one of the coolest things. It's
Yeah.
like you eat what you kill, so you can
Yeah,
do
as
as
much as you
much
want.
or as little as you want. It's also like one of the scarier things.
Yeah, for sure.
And
sure.
and something that I feel like have heard people say, like when you're like, "Oh, honey, I don't want to have a boss."
Yeah.
And it's like, do you know how hard it is to be your own boss? That part is really, and then also some of the people that I've worked with, I'm like, you should have a boss.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, your clients are your boss.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
you
have
have a boss.
Yeah.
Whether
You
it
get
be a
told what to do.
3-year-old with a snack bag waiting for you to open it or your client.
But to your
you got
point,
a boss.
as long as you're within the Hondros kind of like no like glaring offenses, you don't really have anyone to answer to
No.
in your demeanor, the way that you talk to clients or
Right.
other professionals in the industry. And that part was really shocking for me.
Yes.
There's really no check, like where if you come from more of a corporate background, it's like, like you send a nasty email, there's some slap on the wrist or,
Yeah.
But there's a lot of snark.
It's funny you say that.
It's
because
clicky sometimes.
It is. We had
Yeah.
a gentleman that joined our team in a leadership capacity recently, and his background was, professional banking background. Super awesome guy, totally put together, and he was with us for some time, and he basically said, "This industry is more or less. I'm paraphrasing, but it was the frustration in the agents that had no."
Professionalism?
Yeah.
Standard.
Yeah, like
standards
no,
of
there was no, no return phone calls, no return emails,
Sense of
ghosting, and I'm
urgency.
like, welcome to real estate. It just was very, very frustrating for him. And and I've done this now for so long. It's still, of course, frustrating, but I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Most people won't call you back. I was like, it's, you kind of forget about. It's like the dead body in the living room. You just step over it. Yeah. But from an industry standpoint, it's totally, it's one of a kind.
I mean, I'm sure we've all had it, the agents, and I think this also goes back to it's so much more than just connecting to people, but the agents who they're great, we get under contract, and then they're just gone. And you're like,
You're doing all the work for both
where
sides.
you at?
Help, hello. No, it's true. And that's, you were kind of talking earlier about mentoring. That's something that, you understand who your co-op is, and sometimes the whole job is yours, and sometimes only half of it is yours. I just had a great co-op, and I was like, oh, this is so amazing.
I love that.
To have a great co-op. And then other times I'm like, well, it'll just be me.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. You know what I mean? And you bubble wrap your people so that they don't feel the impact of that. But it's just part of part of the job of being the older guard, I think, at times too. But it is not a lot of supervision, frankly.
No. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. All good. Well, any other thoughts on how we all got here and how that's worked out?
I'm still trucking.
We're still here.
My biggest thing for anybody who is wanting to get into it is just do your research, join an awesome brokerage with awesome community. If you're in Cincinnati, come see us. And if you're going to go on a team, don't just jump onto the first
Yeah.
one. Do
All
your
different.
research.
Yep.
You are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you.
Great feedback.
So
Yeah, and I would say interview like people in different walks of the industry. So like
100%.
set 10 coffee appointments and talk to someone who focuses on investment or, just different things that you might be interested in because
And even different roles.
yeah,
you know?
it's
Yeah.
tough when you get settled into something, and everyone knows this. When you start a new job, it can take like weeks or months before you feel comfortable. And if you're doing that and then realizing it's not the right fit, you're already way behind.
Yeah.
So in a commission-based environment, that's tough.
Right. That's great feedback. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks for spending some time with us today. I'm glad to be here.